Hey, Linda.
You guys all go out for beers last Tuesday after the meeting?
Went up, but there was there was yet another candidates for.
No, I mean, after the VOT, did you guys, the VOT go up? Because some people aren't coming back, right?
No, I think we just kind of shut up.
Oh, yeah?
It was late. That shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like we should know that.
Yes, I heard you say, you're still broadcasting.
So Jennifer, you came up just for us? I'm impressed. Thank you. It's a pretty drive, yeah. Very pretty. Wasn't pretty 2 weeks ago, but it's pretty now.
It's just a pain.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Those snow peaks, yes, those snow peaks, we got 53 inches. That's it. That's, you know, like 4.5 feet. But, you know, I have some friends over in Blackhawk, and if you're coming back, you know, there's a point where you kind of break through where that big observation tower is, you break through.
Oh, yeah.
Range. It's all painted.
Yep,
white,
yep.
So it's just,
Gorgeous, yeah.
that's why you put up with freezing cold and.
Okay, are we ready?
Ready. Alrighty, meeting starting at 7:05. Chair Williams,
Here?
Vice Chair Reese,
Present.
Commissioner Cornell,
Here.
Commissioner Duggan. Okay, Commissioner Glasser. Commissioner Herring.
Here.
Commissioner Pizener, okay. Commissioner Dye.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Mahol.
Here.
Alrighty.
Okay, thank you very much. And we'll start off with a warm welcome to Elizabeth for joining this illustrious group.
Thank you. Very happy to get to know you and to serve.
Would you like to say just a few words about yourself that?
No, unfortunately, the way the camera gets, it only gets like the 5 at the top, so no one can see you, but yeah, they can hear you.
They'll hear you.
No complaints there. Yeah, I am relatively a new resident, though I have lived in Boulder County for many years and also been coming up to Ned since the early 90s. And I feel like the best way to not feel like an outsider is to actively involve and integrate and serve. And so that's really why I'm just excited to be here. And thank you for the very warm welcome. Everybody I've met through the Board of Trustees and the planning boards have been just wonderful. So thank you.
Thank you and welcome. Okay. Yeah, you can toggle that. Yeah. Okay. And you have to speak pretty close to it too, I think.
Good.
Okay, moving right along, Roger. Any, what's that? I think she knows who we are, but we could, if you want to go around, sure. Why don't you start?
It's sort of a tradition, maybe.
Okay,
I know how we like to have the meetings go on and on. So I'm Roger Cornell, and I've been on the Plan Commission since 1986. And I've been on the trustee several times, so I'm the old geezer of the Plan Commission. And I forgot more than I remembered. But thanks for having you here.
And he's very honest.
good, Linda.
Linda Glasser, and I met you, and we are somewhat neighbors. I'm just up the hill from you. Welcome to this. I've been on it for a while, and I've learned an awful lot about just the proceedings and the reasons why we do things. So I think it's a real good learning experience.
I'm Mike Dye. I've been on the planning commission for a year and a half-ish now, so kind of relative newcomer. Grew up in Boulder, then Boulder got too much for me and I moved up here. I'm over on Spring Street. It's a special place. I'm glad to have you here.
He's the baby of the family. I'm the second oldest Keezer. I've been on the planning commission starting in 1996. Took a few years off. Made the mistake of coming back. Been here. No, just kidding. And been a chair. Roger was the chair of the planning commission and took his place. And yeah, so I think you're going to find it very rewarding. You'll learn an awful lot, not just about the town, but the way government and planning operates. So hope you're up for the challenge. Thank you.
Welcome. I'm Jim Reese, and I think I've been on since about 2018, and, around there. And I'm the vice chair. I welcome you. Thank you for stepping forward to serve. It's an opportunity, like you said, to learn a lot about the inner workings of the town and why the demands of every resident can't always be met.
I'm glad you're here. It was refreshing that when you stepped up, I felt good about your candidacy from the start. And then you came and sat through all these other events to see who we are. I like your way of thinking. I think when I came in about a year ago, I knew nothing about land use until I sat around Roger Cornell's kitchen table. And you owe yourself the pleasure, not just to get what's in there and how to frame issues, but what comes before and some things that you need to have in the back of your mind as you're making decisions. It's one of the best ways to learn how we got to where we are and to think in context of where we need to go. Welcome.
Thank you. Stephanie?
Hi, I'm Stephanie Herring. I've been on the Planning Commission for count the years here. Close to 10. I remember I was 5 months pregnant with my first daughter when I joined. So, yeah, I think it's great to have a new perspective on the board. I really appreciate you taking the opportunity to join us. I think that some of the things that some of us, it's great to have the perspective of those folks who've been around for a while. I'm hoping that, as we take on different issues, I hope one of the things you find is we all kind of bring a unique perspective. I have, for instance, I have young kids in the school system. So always thinking about their kind of the town from their eyes as well. So yeah, it's kind of a nice group here that we all have a little bit of a different different context, different experience to bring to the planning commission. So welcome.
Okay, thank you. Is Timmy's online or is he just not here?
Hey,
He's here.
yeah, Steve, I'm traveling at a conference right now. I just got on late here. And I'll have to sign off in a few minutes, but 6:30, or 7:30, but wanted to make a quick appearance.
Thank you. Okay, you want to introduce
I
yourself?
I missed what we're going through right now. I'm sorry.
Oh, we have Elizabeth is our new planning commissioner. And so we're just going around doing a quick introduction.
Okay. Welcome, Elizabeth. Yeah, Timmy Duggan here. I was on the planning commission into 18 and then again during this period. And yeah, local resident. I'm in real estate in the area, and I have a 8-year-old son I'm raising here, and yeah, I think you'll be a great addition. So,
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And quick around the town staff.
I'm Brittany Demink. You've already met me. Community planner. I run BZA board and planning commission board and then building permits.
I'll share tonight. My name is Macy Caligaris. I've met you as well. I'm the town clerk. I am the clerk to the Board of Trustees. Here tonight presenting short-term rentals. I do all other licensing in town as well. I am running the election on April 2nd, and I do all things clerk related in the town.
Miranda Fisher, Town Administrator for the Town of Nederland. My role is to oversee all of the departments and divisions within town, so supporting on the administrative level.
Welcome. I'm Jennifer Madsen, the Town Attorney.
Thanks, everyone. I look forward to working together.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, moving on to public comment. Do we have any comment on items that are not on the agenda? We don't have any public here in person, but do we have anyone online wishes to speak? Okay, if not, we'll move on to the approval of minutes from the February 28th, 2024 Planning Commission meeting minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review them? Do you have any comments?
I did want
corrections?
to make a note just for the record that there was some grammatical changes made that Chair Williams and Vice Chair Reese provided. But if anyone has any more, please let me know.
Anything else?
I make a motion, we accept the minutes that have been corrected.
Second. Okay.
Commissioner Duggan? Might be.
Is he still on?
I think so.
He's still on, he's just muted.
Approved. Sorry, approved. I was
Thanks.
muted.
Chair
Thanks.
Williams?
Yes.
Commissioner Herring?
Yes.
Commissioner Glasser? Commissioner Cornell? Vice Chair Reese?
Yes.
Commissioner Dye?
Yes.
Alrighty, that's all who was here.
Okay, that passes. We'll move on to action items. Tom is going to recuse himself. I will call you when we're ready. Okay, before we start action items, does any commission member wish to disqualify him or herself for any personal or financial interest in any of the action items before us this evening?
Hey, Steve, Timmy Duggan here. I'm not use myself or anything, but I want to disclose that I am the property owner at one of the adjacent properties to the Wingate parcel, along with a partner. So the two of us are co-owners of a parcel adjacent to the Wingate property.
Okay, thank you for that. I don't think that requires a recusal.
It doesn't necessarily unless you feel that because of your ownership interest of that lot, that you can't judge the application in a fair and unbiased manner.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, yeah, I wouldn't want like big crazy circus house to be built right next to my parcel necessarily, but as long as everything in the PUD and everything proposed is all in line with what's totally legal and possible, then I have no problem with that. So.
Timmy, just for clarification, it's a minor subdivision that's before you tonight, not a PUD.
Yes, thank you. Yep, perfect.
Okay, just want to make sure. So, and I mean, I'd be kind of getting into it, I guess, in the intention currently of the parcel is, of course, to break off what is being dedicated to town. And then Lori Wingate, who is on tonight, doesn't have any current plans for the lots. Of course, the lots are large
Right.
enough to be developed. So I was
Right.
getting ahead of ourselves a little bit here, but just want to give context for you to maybe make that decision, whether you feel, and I also, it sounds like though you might not even be here through the whole hearing as is.
Correct. I'm traveling at a conference right now, and I'll have to sign off in about 15 minutes here. But yes, I understand that Lori doesn't have any immediate plans or anything. So everything I know about the situation so far, there's nothing I have a problem with in terms of, oh, I'm the adjacent property owner. I don't want this in my backyard. I don't have any problem at the moment. So.
Okay, well, Timmy, I'll leave it to you if you want to, since you have to leave in 10 minutes. If you want to just leave now, that's fine too. It's up to you.
Um, that,
You want to
that,
hear the,
I don't know. It might be better that way, I suppose. If that's okay with everybody
I would
else.
just maybe
You know, again,
recommend.
if there's any conflict of interest, it would be me being against it sort of artificially, which like I've said, I'm not as far as any knowledge that I have. So
Yeah,
I'm
I guess
happy
I
to
just,
stay on it. But
sorry, Timmy, I think just as staff, I guess my only concern would be you're starting the hearing, but you're not going to be a part of the voting party. And so just
yep.
kind of from maybe a clean perspective, not having you participate in this discussion, I'm not trying to kick you out by any means, but just want to be mindful that you wouldn't likely get to the vote tonight.
Yep, that helps me sleep better at night as well. So that's totally fine.
okay. All right.
All right, well, farewell then.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you guys, and I appreciate and honor whatever decision the commission comes to. So,
Okay, thank you.
all right, thank you, Lori.
Okay, Miranda, you introducing this
I just
one?
did it. No, I'm just kidding. Yes,
Oh.
I already did it. Yes, happy to. So tonight is the consideration of a minor subdivision application that is submitted by the town of Nederland for the Mary Q. Wingate Living Trust. Provided quite a bit of information in this aim, so I'm do a pretty high overview. In September of 2000, the town of Nederland entered into an agreement to for the town of passed she did well. With her divided parcel into 4 plus hands. Given though the conservation, even the town parcels, a major sub is not an appropriate process for this transfer and this division. So we came to you all and we asked you to do an administrative, allow us to do a minor subdivision instead of a major. You ultimately recommended approval of that. We then went on to the Board of Trustees, and in 2023, there was a unanimous approval to process this application as a minor instead of a major. So that's why the evaluating criteria before you is for a minor. In the plat or in the packet is the plat, so you can see exactly how the parcels are being divided. The evaluating criteria that you're going to use for this is under Nederland Municipal Code 1736. And so just want to kind of briefly touch on those. The first is that it satisfies all requirements outlined in the subdivision regulations. The second is that the subdivision conforms to all the zoning district requirements, and I speak to that in a little bit, that it conforms to all other town codes, and that there's adequate water and sewer capacity for this parcel, as well as it conforming to the comprehensive plan. So in the town analysis, we really identified that these parcels that Lori wants to keep are large enough based on their zoning of low density residential. You need 16,000 square feet. And as you see in the packet, we indicate for lots 1, 2, 3, and 5, they're significantly larger than 16,000 square feet. So in essence, what we're saying is that if Lori ever does seek to develop these lots, she has ample amount of square footage to do so and to meet all setback requirements. We also confirmed again that if Lori ever did want to develop these, we do have the appropriate water and sewer capacity to have developments at those 4 lots. We also have utilities located both kind of along the highway as well as the north side of the parcel. So different options in terms of connection points. just again, I want to just kind of reiterate that Lori doesn't have any current plans, and she can speak to that more. But if she ever were to, of course, housing is a need here. And so recognizing that, but really spoke more to the parcels coming to town. Those have that conservation easement, which really identifies that they can only be utilized for recreational purposes. There's been some initial talk amongst ProSab about connecting trails, connecting over to the Big Springs and other parts of town. Some conversation about downhill pump or bike track, but really looking at more of the trail system and mitigation. We're very interested and passionate about mitigating the town parcels. It's very heavily forested over there. And so I think that's really step one for us coming down in terms of next steps. But both the comp plan, the PROS, the Trails Master Plan, all of these plans just speak to how we want to have more opportunities for trail connectivity, for outdoor recreation, all of the things that really make Nederland what it is, which is that outdoor experience. And these parcels provide us that opportunity. So definitely a huge generous gift from the Wingate family. As town staff, we have no concerns. We do feel that this application meets all of the minor subdivision criteria. So we would recommend approval tonight. And as I mentioned, Lori is online with us and happy to answer any questions or to share a little bit about her and her family.
Thank you. Thank you, Miranda. Lori, would you like to add anything to the introduction?
Well, I am hoping that you can see this if I can get it up to can you see that?
Sort of.
That is my great grandmother and my great uncle in front of the cabin that is that property. And so my love of this place is pretty strong. And I don't know if you notice, every August there is a Mary Wingate Day at the Carousel, which is something that we've committed to continuing to do just in honor of my mom and how much she loved Nederland. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm really happy that we're getting this done. I'm sorry that it wasn't done previously, but it's exciting for me that we're at this point, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, great. Thank you. Thank you for joining as well. Okay, at this point, I'll open it up to the commission for any questions or comments before we open it up for public comment.
This is Commissioner Reese. I just want to say thank you for pursuing this. And I know it's taken a long time and a lot of paperwork. So thank you. Sometimes it's hard to be charitable, but we really appreciate it. And I'm sure that we'll find a great way to utilize that in the spirit that your family intends.
Well, I look forward to enjoying it.
Okay, any other questions? Roger?
Well, would it be helpful for staff, at least for me? So I'm looking at the different parcels. So just to go over again to review, because it was months ago, which parcels are staying with the Wingate properties, which would be developed, and which are the parcels that are part of gifted and being purchased. So
Yep.
I'm looking at all these.
Happy to. So 1, 2, 3, and 5 are staying with Lori. And then 4 and 6 are transferring to town.
So those are in order of the maps, 1, 2.
You've got 5 and 4, like a little 3 is in the south corner. And then you skip up to 4. It's a little, but 4 and I think the biggest thing is 4 and 6 are the ones coming to town. All the rest stay with Lori. I know, then there's it's very tiny writing, but. So maybe Roger, the one that's in the middle, most northern side, kind of right in the middle, there's a kind of a square lot with a little blip at the top. That's one that's staying with town. And then go southeast, and there's a kind of so that's south, and then go a little bit further east. There's lots. north of the big turn is lot 6, and that's what's coming to town as well.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, I will open it up for public comment. Do we have any public online wishes to speak on this? Okay. Having heard no comment, I'll bring it back to, we'll close the public comment session and bring it back to the Planning Commission for any comments. We'll go around. We'll start with Stephanie. If you'd like to make any comments or further questions?
No, sorry, because my thumb on the mute button. No, other than agree with what Commissioner Reese said. Obviously, this is a huge gift to the town, and I think ideas like some of the ones that Miranda mentioned related to trails and whatnot, all, really exciting opportunities. We'll see which ones come to fruition, but I don't really have any concerns or questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Roger, anything else?
Well, it's not a big deal, but I guess the question is that they are large parcels. They do meet the standard. This won't have any effect on my, approving it, but they certainly could be kind of follow up on what Tim, Duggan was talking about. I mean, they could actually come back for, there's not a conservation easement on all of them, so there could be further subdivision down the line.
Sure. I mean, that was something we talked about with Lori, and Lori, I don't know if you want to speak to like why you divided it the way you did. And maybe if you wanted to speak to, I realize you can't promise anything in the future, but this large scale development concern.
Yeah, I can speak to that. So the reason it's divided the way it is actually quite just me looking at a map and trying to figure out where would be a straight line and a straight line that would have access to a road if we eventually wanted to. I have 3 daughters, and it's hard having a family property that is, you figure out how to split between people. And so we just kind of thought that each of my 3 kids would potentially, want to do what they wanted to do on that property, if it's build a, pitch a tent or build a house. But it's just thinking ahead about how to deal with a family property and a family.
And I agree with that. Not that I should agree or not agree, but I understand and I agree 100%. So some of the property, it was, so really part of the basis of what I'm actually thinking, so you guys would all understand, is that we're going through this whole, as we vote on this, so the town's going through all this search for property and for further development and the cost of housing. So we are receiving some good properties, but there are also properties for future development that could become home sites at a later date. So I think it's a win-win situation.
That was the consideration, was trying to make sure there could be a home on the parcels, but just a home.
So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Roger. Linda?
I think it's a very generous gift for the family, and it was a real pleasure knowing your mom. So I appreciate that you're doing this. It's a good memory of her as well.
Well, I feel lucky to be able to do it. It's fun to do something that she really wanted.
Okay, Mike?
Like everybody else has said, it's an incredibly generous gift. I also commend you for thinking ahead in terms of inheritance for your daughters. That's a hard thing to do. Looking over the application, I don't see any reason that it wouldn't be approved according to section 17, following the approval for minor subdivisions. I think it all fits very nicely. Thank you for putting it together so nicely.
Thank you. Jim?
I don't have anything further to add. I'm in support of this.
Okay. So we'll give you a little bit of a reprieve there. Elizabeth, would you like to make a comment?
I also read the packet in preparation for this evening's meeting, so had a chance to review and appreciate the generosity of this opportunity as well and support it. And yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And also I have no issues. I went through the standards for approval. Everything looks perfectly fine. I wanted to echo everyone's comments to thank you very much for hard work, diligence. Sorry it took so long, but I think it's a generous gift, and I think it'd be really well appreciated in many ways. So thank you again. Any other comments? If not, did we have a motion?
I move to recommend approval of the minor subdivision for the Mary Q. Wingate Living Trust parcels.
I will second. Oh, sorry.
Commissioner Reese, there's actually a resolution in the packet.
Sorry, I didn't put that in our proposed motion.
Okay, so how's it going?
Approve resolution 2024-16, approving Wingate minor subdivision.
I'll try again. Of the minor subdivision for the Mary Q. Wingate Living parcels, parcel 2024-16. Resolution 2024-16.
Okay. Commissioner Cornell.
Yes.
Commissioner.
Yes.
Chair Williams,
Yes.
Vice Chair Reese,
Yes.
Commissioner Dye,
Yes.
Commissioner Lasser.
Yes.
How do you say your last name again? Commissioner Penzinger.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to our next action item.
Thanks, Lori.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Moving on to action item 5.3, short-term rental ordinance. And I think May, are you going?
Yes, I am.
Thank you.
Yeah. 2020. The board trustees discussed Based on the feedback. So based on the feedback that was provided, 2 ordinances were drafted that represent different options for licensing structure. One option allows for the owner or tenant of a property to obtain a license. The owner or the tenant must be a primary resident. And the other option allows only the owner, who is a primary resident, to obtain a license. Included in both the ordinances are the following: a cap of 60 short-term rental licenses, a requirement of a minimum of 4 documented stays per year. We added a fire pit ban and bear-resistant trash containers to operating standards. We defined what documentation is required to obtain a license. For a primary resident, we added that the person must have a Colorado driver's license or ID and 2 other forms of documentation to show primary residency. Additional language has been added if the Planning Commission recommends the tenant license ordinance. We clarified that the town clerk can issue administrative penalties for violations, and we added a new section to clarify an appeal process to the Board of Trustees. Town staff feel that the short-term rental code amendments being proposed address the problems identified in the following ways. We are limiting the number, so the first goal was to limit the number of housing stock that is converted to short-term rentals. And the solution to that is implementing a cap system and amending the licensing types. The second goal is to ensure that short-term rentals are operating in a very safe manner and are respectful of the neighborhood in which they operate. And the solution to that is implementing a fire ban for short-term rentals and requiring bear-proof containers. The third goal was to provide means for neighbors to work with short-term rental owners on their concerns and improve the line of communication. And the solution to that is implementing a notification system for neighbors about approved short-term rentals. The final goal was to simplify administration of the license process for efficient use of town staff time. The solution to that is to limit the number of short-term rental license types and reduce the tracking of days rented. So the question before you this evening is, which license structure does the Planning Commission want to recommend to the Board of Trustees for consideration at their regular meeting on April 16th? So we have before you Ordinance 860-A, which is the license type for the property owner. And then we have Ordinance 860B, which is the primary license type for the owner or the tenant.
Okay, thank you, Macy. So basically what we're looking at this evening, last time we had this as a discussion item, we kind of narrowed in on, I think it was ordinance 860A, and the difference between the two, and I don't know, maybe I might ask Attorney Madsen to just kind of quickly illustrate the difference between the two. It's just a tenant and a definition.
Right. So under A, and I think maybe, I don't know if you got it backwards, Macy, but A is only the property owner can obtain a short-term rental license. 860B, a property owner or a tenant can obtain the short-term rental license. And so what that allows is, there might be somebody who owns property but lives in California, but rents to somebody in Nederland, long-term rents to somebody in Nederland in a unit, and that long-term renter can obtain an STR license under A.
Right, with the approval of the owner, or the owner
Yes,
shows.
yes.
I think that's an important stipulation, that the owner has to approve. It's not like the tenant can just go out and do a STR without the owner's knowledge.
Right. There has to be some recognition that the owner approves of it. And yes, but it's really the tenant who has the license and that's responsible for complying with the STR regulations.
Okay. So basically, the ordinances are very similar with those distinctions. So with that, let's open up for any questions that the commission might have. Elizabeth?
Would there be a circumstance in which a person would be able to then apply for both a short-term license, rental license and a long-term rental license and hold both licenses? Because it sounds like they could own a property, have a tenant in the main part of the house, and then maybe want a short-term renter in the ADU part of the house. And so they would be then applying for both a long-term, rental license, but the owner would have to be on the premises as well somehow. I'm just trying to figure out if there would be a circumstance in which somebody would apply for both license types.
Yeah, that's a really great question. And in the town of Nederland, we don't have a process for licensing long-term rentals. But we do have outlined in our ordinance that only one person can only one short-term rental license may be obtained per person. So we,
Per property, not per property.
I believe it's listed as per person.
Well, right. I mean, only one. So in your situation, though, it sounds like the owner is absent, right? The owner is absent and is long-term renting the primary residence.
I don't know that I had a scenario in mind. I guess I was just trying to envision if somebody had a home that had a rentable unit and then they had an ADU, are we going to be in a situation where they're going to want a short-term rental multiple parts of their house, or if it's only going to be one license per property?
Yes, it's only one license per property. Yep.
Although I think you might have uncovered a loophole there. If the Nederland resident, doesn't matter where they live, owns multiple properties and has multiple tenants, then each tenant could, I think, if I understand the wording correctly, could get a short-term rental license in a, I don't know, franchise kind of operation. Did I?
Capped at 60 licenses.
Capped at 60, right.
Right.
But that would essentially be one person or,
But it's the tenant that's responsible
right.
for the license. The tenant has to
Understood.
apply. The tenant is really responsible. So
Yeah.
it's the tenant's call as to whether to have a short-term rental.
Okay.
Yes.
And then in the case of the driver's license, the Colorado driver's license, will it require Nederland as the residency, or would they also be okay if it was Aspen or Durango or?
Yeah, for the person obtaining the license, they would need to have the address of the short-term rental in Nederland on their driver's license or ID. Mhm. Yeah, and along with the other documentation would have to have that address as well.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, Jim?
I was curious, you have listed on page 47 underneath the graph there that it was based on feedback to provide the two different type of ordinances to allow the tenant. And I just wondered what was the feedback? Was it from STR owners or more community? Can you give us a little bit more information about that, Macy?
I'm gonna defer to Jennifer on that one to help me, please.
I have to look at page 47. Oh, thank you.
Right under the table.
Yeah, it just says that it was the reason that we came up with the two different types of ordinances was based on feedback, but it doesn't say from
Oh.
who.
It's probably my feedback.
Maybe I could just jump, sorry, I was multitasking. Maybe I could just jump in. I think, yes, it's Attorney Madsen's feedback. And I think just kind of acknowledging kind of throughout the process, this has been one of those questions that keeps arising. And so we just felt like at the time in which you vote, it's best to give you two options to really consider both of these versus just kind of driving one path. We knew we ultimately wanted the cap of 60. We knew we wanted one license type. So now it's really kind of this ownership component a little bit that to me feels like the last thing you're trying to resolve.
And I can go a little bit further here in that what the license type that allows for both the owner and the tenant to obtain a short-term rental license. You're treating essentially people who own property in Nederland and people who live in Nederland and own property, and people who live outside of Colorado, own property in Nederland, and long-term rent, you're treating them the same. You're not treating them differently. And also you're allowing, I mean, it meets the goal of, making sure that, well, it meets your goals of limiting your housing stock, and also a tenant who is a long-term tenant in a lot of cases can be very similar to an owner.
Okay. Answer your question? Okay, any other questions before we open it up for public comment? Roger?
Well, and they're identical except for the owner and the tenant? Just to verify. Okay, that's why I saw it.
Okay. Stephanie, since you were on the subcommittee with me, would you want to make any comments?
No, I think that everyone covered it pretty well. Hopefully, we're happy to answer any questions if people have any other curiosities about the background or how we got to where we got.
Okay. Any other questions at this point? We'll open it up for public comment. Do we have anyone on the public that wishes to speak on this action item? Okay. Any hands raised, Britt? Oh,
Sorry. Hey guys, I'm Nick Bunfield. I live in Nederland. I've got a bit of a unique situation where I've got a property on the edge of town there. I've separated it into 2 units. I currently have a license to rent the top unit. The bottom unit I don't have a license for, and I live there. So I do actually live there. It's my work situation. I'm an airline pilot. So more than half the month I'm gone with work. So it's kind of a situation where I would like to get a second license to be able to rent that out. With this new ordinance, by the looks, I would still not be able to do that. Is that correct?
I believe that is correct, Nick, and that we would only allow one license per property or per person.
but he could do a long-term rental, correct? And also a short-term license.
That's correct. You could have one of the units occupied by a long-term renter and then have the other unit be a short-term rental. That's correct.
Okay, so there's going to be no allowance for commercially zoned properties, which I'm sure there's not too many of them. I don't exactly know the situation, but why would they not be prioritized in this when, if they're set up and designed particularly for this situation, it's going to benefit the community. It's not taking away from housing in residential areas where typical Airbnbs are. And the other thing with the tenant may obtain a license, that opens it up to arbitrage, which in my opinion creates all these problems kind of from the get-go.
Okay. Thanks, Nick. Anyone else wish to speak from the public? Okay. Having heard nothing, I'll go ahead and close the the public comment section, bring it back to the planning commission. We'll go around the table again and have any final comments or questions at this point? Elizabeth, we'll start with you this time.
I guess I just wanted to see if I'm understanding Nick's comment and maybe just to address why I would not find it favorable to have two short-term rental licenses when there isn't a long-term resident on site who one of the main kind of incentives was that we had more accountability, responsibility. And so maybe I'm not understanding that piece of it correctly, but the advantage of one short-term rental per property allows for any other dwellings to be really owner occupied or more long-term occupied for the accountability and safety side of things.
Yeah, I definitely understand that. It's just a kind of a unique situation where I do live there. So being gone for over half the month with work, that is when I would rent it out.
Thank you. Yeah, Nick, we closed the public comment.
sorry.
We understand your point. Thank you. Okay, anything else, Elizabeth?
No, thank you.
Okay, Roger?
Yeah, not that it matters, but I think that's a specific case and would have been nice to know exactly where the address was. He mentioned commercial. So my comments are that I think from what we talked about, especially from the last meeting, we were very much in favor of the option with only the owner to obtain it. And I certainly feel like that is a strong incentive. And I think we had, from what we discovered, we're very close to the max. There was actually just a few more of the short-term rentals would be available. And then we'd be at our cap. So I would, I feel it's strongly in favor of the owner may obtain a license. And I would encourage us all to at least look at that. We can, as we've had in the past history, sometimes we get so stuck on, what if, let's just try that. And we can certainly, if it's, the owner is an issue and there's such a demand the other way, we can certainly change it. But having that Nederland resident owner occupied is certainly, and I think other than the ones that we're pretty much there. So it wouldn't be that big of a change. We're not making a huge change. It would be maybe one or two residences that would be impacted because we're already at that in the 50s, I believe. So I would encourage us to go forward with the first option A.
Okay, thank you. Linda?
Can I just qualify? So you're saying not to allow the tenant to also be able to, option A is the one that only allows, it doesn't list it here. I'm just clarifying for the record. So we all know.
Okay.
Thank you, Jim.
To clarify on Nick's situation, if he is has the primary residence there, he would be allowed to have two short-term
No,
permits?
no, that's the point.
Yeah, but I must have misunderstood what you said on that, Macy.
He's asking for that, but that's not.
Yeah, but I need some clarification on if he is still the long-term renter owner there and he wants to sublease or have short-term rental, he would be allowed to?
He would be allowed to short-term rent one unit.
Just one unit.
On the
And then
parcel.
would he be allowed to have a long-term rental
Yes.
on the other one?
Yes,
And that tenant would be allowed to have a short-term rental permit as well?
Well, in here, it's section 6-93, short-term rental license required. Letter F, only one license may be issued to a person. So we,
I think what Linda's saying is that if he has a long-term tenant, that long-term tenant could get a license as well as Nick could get a license.
the way that this is worded, I think so. So I think if you wanted it to include the word property in letter F as well, to say a person, to maybe issued to a person or property.
Then if they have multiple ADUs on their property, then we're saying they can only short-term rental one of them.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Yeah, part of the reason, as we discussed in the subcommittee, was since we have a cap of 60, to prevent someone from picking up all of the licenses and perhaps not even using them, but limiting the number that's available. So Linda, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
So what are you sort of feeling at this point? Okay, all right. Okay, Mike?
Well, my initial thought is that I like option A. I think where the owner and only the owner is allowed to get a short-term rental license. I think adding the tenant as a possibility into the mix opens up a big can of worms. I like the rest of it. It's very well put together and exactly what we asked for. And I also see that it makes town's life and yours specifically, Macy, a whole lot easier. I guess I'd ask you, Macy, do you have a preference in terms of manageability from the town's perspective in terms of option A versus option B?
No, I don't necessarily have a preference. I think initially, as the licensing authority, it does sound concerning to have tenants applying for licenses. But if they have written permission as reflected by the property owner, I think that's a good step to have in that process. So in terms of process and licensing, after thinking about it and breaking it all down, I don't have concerns or preference.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I think it sort of boils down to whether it's restricted to only town residents or opens it up to a owner that is not, physically in Nederland, but has a long-term rental. So the point is that there's somebody there for safety reasons all the time. I
Yeah,
think
understood.
that's sort of what it boils down to because of issues, pertaining to, excluding other people
Right.
from being able to, they own a house, but they can't short-term rent.
Right, understood. And I do like that in both scenarios, there is a safety management of having somebody that lives there on site. And that's good about both aspects of them.
Yeah, that was important for the subcommittee. We felt
Yeah.
very, we wanted someone there all the time.
Yeah.
So.
Nick's comment made me think of, a common scenario in bed and breakfast is that, so somebody lives in the house and they rent out multiple rooms in that house. I've seen that happen many times. So not as in like, it's not as separated units. It might not impact Nick's situation, but in my understanding, that would be allowed. The scenario where I live in my house, I rent out 2 rooms separately on Airbnb. Is that not allowed? Because
So I think you're not
Yeah.
necessarily renting by bedroom.
right.
Like you're renting, it's your whole home or it's a bedroom in
Right.
your
Yeah.
place.
Mhm.
So, I think when we've spoken, I think I'm just going to kind of speak to what we've spoken with Nick about. Nick can choose to rent his whole home or just rent
Yeah.
the upper part.
Yeah.
And that could be done under one license because it's still all the same unit,
Right.
but how he chooses maybe to list that could
Right.
potentially vary a bit, but it's still the same one structure where, you know, his desire to do potentially two separate structures and rent them separately all the time and have like an upper unit and a lower unit would be prohibited because it's two separate, it would be two separate listings in that
Understood.
case.
Yeah.
So bed and breakfast would still be legal.
Correct. Well, that's like specific to their zoning that there's alternative options
Sure.
in terms of hotel, motel,
Yeah. Great.
things like that.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, that's it.
That's it.
Okay. Tom, do you have anything to?
No, I had the same question that you did, Mike, and I think that's clarified, so I'm good. And Elizabeth, thanks for catching what she did.
Okay, Jim?
Well, I'm glad that we're getting, thank you for the hard work of the subcommittee. I'm glad we're getting to something that we're looking at actually passing and making some changes to this. I agree with Roger. I think that at least for now, I would support just having the owners be the ones that were able to, option A, able to apply for a license. And I really appreciate, and I've come to think that the most way to manage, the goal of preserving housing stock for rental is the cap. And I think that's going to make the main issue there. There's 54 licenses, I believe was the latest count. Is that correct?
I believe we were at 56. However, as of yesterday, I had one of my problem short-term rentals decide that they're not renewing anymore. So now there's one open spot as well.
So there'd be 5 available. So it'll be interesting. I think that it would be good to go forward with option A. And, there's only 5 available, plus there's a wait list. So I don't know how many options we're going to have for tenants to rent that out. And then, we could always look at that down the line. If that ends up being something that Macy has, more than, 1 or 2 people that are saying, hey, this is something that I really want to do. I trust my long-term tenant. He's been with me 5 years, all that stuff, special circumstances, we could reconsider it. But right now, I'd like to just see this go forward with option A. And I think the cap is going to be plus the notification of neighbors, the good neighbor policy, I think is going to solve a lot of problems. So thank you for all your hard work. Thank you, Macy. Thank you, Miranda, and everybody who worked on that.
Okay, thank you. Stephanie? Are you muted?
I'm sorry, no, I didn't say nothing to add. I think I got all my comments in at the subcommittee level, so thanks.
Okay. So I'm getting the kind of the feeling that people are sort of leaning towards option A, which would be primary resident. But not tenant.
Yes.
Okay. Any other comments, questions, concerns?
Just want to verify that it still also requires the documentation of four times of showing that it's being used.
Yep.
And I think the tenant owner versus tenant piece could also be a can of worms in terms of not just permission of the owner, but then are pets allowed? What price are you setting? What are the cleaning things that are going to be required in between? And it just seems like it could get messy. So that's why I favor the owner only, but could be persuaded.
I guess one could argue that a tenant wouldn't have the same concern for the property as the owner might, for example. So, yeah, that is a concern.
Or for the neighbors, perhaps.
Or for the neighbors, right? Okay. Well, if there aren't isn't any further discussion, would someone like to float a motion? Now, quick question for Attorney Mattson. Can we do this with just one motion, or do we have to decline? No, we can do it with one motion.
No, I think just one motion is fine. A recommend.
Recommend to approve option
Yes.
A or B. Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, in that case, I move to recommend approval of ordinance 860-A, amending certain sections of Article 5 of Chapter 6 of the Nederland Municipal Code concerning business licensing of short-term rentals, imposing a maximum number of licenses and amending the penalties for violations thereof.
Okay, Roger seconds.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Oh, I did have one point. I'm sorry. I don't know if it's too late, but the question came up, whether or not the actual fine schedule should be in the ordinance or should it be removed?
So the fines are listed in the ordinance, which is different from the way that it was. The ordinance referenced setting the fines by resolution. You can do it either way. My preference is to have the fines set forth in the ordinance language. Fines are not going to change in the same manner that your fees will. Your fees are going to be adjusted based on staff time, other town resources that are used. Don't frequently change. And so the preference from my perspective is to keep it in the ordinance, because then the fine is listed together with what the violations, the penalties, the actions that can be taken against a licensee. It's all there together in one place. You don't have to go to two separate places.
So in a question of consistency, is this the way we handle it with other ordinances?
I think it's probably mixed. Miranda might be able to speak to this a little bit better, but it could, I don't know.
Yeah, I guess I agree that it's a little mixed. I think I understand where Attorney Mattson is coming from, and that, violation fines are less likely to change than fees. We revisit that fee schedule annually. We're not often amending violations. We're amending just your standard application fee. So I feel comfortable in talking to Attorney Mattson about this more, having the fines listed, and then having any reference towards fees, referencing the fee schedule.
Okay. Yeah, I've been going back and forth. Well, first of all, I didn't really separate fines versus fees for one, and I felt it might be a lot easier to put everything in like the fee schedule, so that if anything changes, you don't have to go back and change the ordinance. However, from what you described, it is nice to have everything described in one place.
And the ordinance does actually reference the fee schedule for fees, which is really what I was most concerned about. So I agree with you, the fine to the fee language, but I feel comfortable having fines listed, fees going back to the resolution for the fee schedule.
All right. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, just to muddy the water further, but then I guess I'm confused, because I thought that, I'm looking back at the minutes from last month, that Macy said that the fees were changing, or that the fines were changing, that they were going up to 175 for the first offense, 775 for the second, and 1525 for the third. And then that's not what we have in the ordinance.
You're correct on that. It's my mistake for not sending over those adjustments to the ordinance. I'm typing that out now to send over, to make sure that we get the numbers correct and they reflect the 2024 fee schedule. You're correct. The first violation is 175, the second violation is 775, and the third is 1,525.
So we need an amendment.
So I think we need to, so can we just amend
Well, yeah, I don't think you guys are actually approving the ordinance tonight. You're just approving which ordinance to recommend to the board. So.
But what they recommend should
Oh.
have the language that they want to recommend.
Right.
So
I
I
wanna
think,
make
yes,
sure
they
that-
should make a motion with
So
the amendment.
somebody can just make a motion to amend with the fines that the town clerk
Okay.
just specified.
And then should we also specify in section 6-93F that we should also include the word property to only issue one per person and property?
Well, I think if they're approving the owner one, then there really is only one, right? There could still only be one per property.
Okay,
The issue would be if there's a tenant. Yeah.
okay.
Except if the owner had multiple ADUs on their property.
You can only rent out one.
So then it's one per property, or I
It's still-
guess it would still only be one per person. Sorry, you're correct.
One
Sorry.
per person.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so we need to amend.
So I move to amend the motion to include the new 2024 fines and fees schedule.
Fine schedule, right?
Fine schedule of, do I need to say the amounts? What was it, 175? 175 for the first offense,
775 for the second
775 for the second,
and 1,525 for the third offense.
and 1525 for the third offense.
You got it. And the ordinance does specify that they lose the possibility to apply for 1 year. So that is correct in there. It's just the numbers that need to change.
I amend my second.
Okay,
There's Bud.
Britt, you take a,
Okay.
Take a vote.
Chair Williams,
yes.
Commissioner Dye,
Yes.
Commissioner Herring,
Yes.
Commissioner Pinziner,
Yes.
Vice Chair Reese,
Yes.
Commissioner Glasser, Commissioner Cornell.
Okay, thank you very much. All right. Before we move on to our informational items, does anyone need to take a break, or shall we want to take a short break, 5-minute break? Okay, then we'll come back and do informational items. To reconvene.
And your gavel.
Okay.
I'm ready. All right.
All right, we're ready.
Town
Let's
staff report.
move on to the town staff report.
Yeah,
Thank you.
so the highlight's not in here, but I'm just going to do it. Just huge shout out to our public works team when we had our heavy snow event. It was a lot to manage, and I think they did an incredible job. They were well prepared going into the event, did the best they could, and I know not everyone was happy, but really worked to get through the storm to the best they could. They always do post-event and post-accident event recaps, and so this was, of course, an event, and they did assess some ways to do better, ways we could have communicated better. But I just, they worked 16-hour days, 5 or 6 days straight. It was a ton of work.
We love them, not you.
Really proud of them for that.
So Miranda, can I ask a quick question? You mentioned that there is going to be, or there was a kind of a session on what do we do right, what do we do wrong, how can we improve? Is
Yep, that already happened. Yes.
okay? Can you say anything about what came out of that, or?
Just really recognizing right people, right equipment. I think that we had many people who felt stronger in the grader and loader, who weren't the ones operating those pieces of equipment. And we probably could have been quicker in, doing, obviously our primary goal is to get the roads passable, and to get them passable in both directions. And so that, and then also just recognizing if we had the right people and the right equipment, perhaps our ability to go back and kind of grab some of those berms and deal with some of that buildup that we automatically create. And then just also looking into kind of complaints, we had the supervisor was doing his best to just kind of mitigate complaints every which direction. And we really need to prioritize them. Like, I don't need him on his phone all day long being like, oh, now I got to go over here. Now I got to go over there. Really deciding that we want to grab all the complaints, and at the end of the day, he and I will do a debrief, and then just being stronger with our communication, pushing out more readily, like, here's where we are, here's where we're going. We actually did get GPS trackers for our trucks, and so we'll be able to link to a website where you'll be able to see our trucks. The only downfall is you won't be able to see our equipment, the loader and the grader, but you'll be able to see the trucks, and our teams travel in twos. And so it'll give you an idea of like how far is someone from my neighborhood, so we can stop fielding those calls of like, when are you going to get to me? And so those are some of the big takeaways. I think this was just a tough event, and I know the berms were hard. We did come out at one point and just say like, we got to kind of do this together. But we do, I think those are the biggest takeaways. And in terms of just performance though, it comes down to right people, right equipment.
Was there any talk of like rotating of staff, particularly during long events where you can't work the whole event, like
Yep.
this
So,
one?
yep, we did talk about phasing staff into the thought is teams, but if you think about it, it's still just a team of 4.
Yeah.
So you break them up, you only got 2 out there instead of 4. And so I think it just depends on the nature of the event. The team was strong the first couple of days. Morale started to suffer. And I will say community members didn't show up in the best way. We had staff members being stopped in their equipment and being cussed out by community members, pretty aggressive behaviors, pretty aggressive at town hall, how people came and showed up. And so I think that's something that we're really trying to figure out, how do we mitigate that? Because their fatigue starts to weigh in by day 5, day 6, but then they're also getting screamed at. And so it's a hard balance. And so we just ask for respect and understanding that every event we're going to get better, we're going to get stronger, and just ask people to understand that it's constantly a growth. This is a brand new team, finally fully staffed, but still, for that to only be 4 is still saying a lot.
Okay, thank you.
So just because additional shout outs, we have a new Class A CDL driver. So now 3 of the 12 public works staff members have Class A CDLs. Something we did different though is we also have them sign an agreement that says if you leave us, you have to reimburse us for the cost of that. And so that helps us with the churn, because what we were doing is we were paying for CDLs and then they were like right out the door. So now that we pay well, it's different. People want to be here, but we are still offering that kind of security a bit for paying for 3 people to go through CDL, but went from 0 to 3, which is, I think, an incredible feat to have now all of those trained operators. Andrew Bliss was honored. It was awarded the Colorado Rural Water Association's Rookie Wastewater Operator of the Year, and that's for the whole state of Colorado. So I think that's a huge deal that we have an employee that got that award, and he was awarded that last week. Our utilities team has just been rocking it. They've had main breaks, and if you recall historically with main breaks, it's like a multi-day event, and it's probably all over town. They have been able to handle these in just a couple hours and getting them dealt with, cleaned up. So we do have some damage in front of Tungsten Village. We have a sidewalk we have to repair, but they've been able to knock these things out same day. And so again, I just think that's proving they're methodical in their approach. They know what they're going to do. They know how to kind of attack these challenges, and they're able to do so successfully. So I'm really excited for that. And then just want to give kudos to the community center team. We had a third-party vendor cut himself pretty badly on his hand, and the way that they treated him and dealt with that medical emergency was nothing short of amazing. They were able to stop the bleeding. They were able to assist him until emergency services arrived. They did all of the right things, followed all the right protocols, and did so without panic. They just knew what to do, addressed it quickly, and got the guy to the emergency room. I think within like an hour, he was being stitched up. So big shout out to them. Broadband, if you recall, one of these meetings, I told you that T-Mobile and Verizon were trying to claim that they provide 100 up, 100 down internet. Not true. So we filed an appeal. We were awarded that appeal. T-Mobile and Verizon do have an opportunity to kind of do a rebuttal. I doubt they will, because if you run just about any address here in their system, T-Mobile will tell you they don't serve you. So hopeful that our appeal stands. If it doesn't, the impact of that is under our $17 million broadband grant. It'll take 450-ish houses in the heart of Nederland, and we won't be able to extend fiber to their homes. So that's what we want to avoid. So I'm confident that will move forward. There is a chart in the packet that just shows a bunch of addresses. That's missing mile, missing middle mile, kind of the other areas of broadband that we want to keep going. So while we secure broadband for Nederland and the immediate surrounding areas, we as a broadband group between Nederland, Gilpin, and Clear Creek still strongly believe that we have a responsibility to help continue to move broadband out to our neighbors. So that's what that is. Proposition 123 is still working with a third party, a private entity, to develop affordable housing throughout town. And we anticipate that they'll be ready to come to you with a preliminary discussion next month so they can show you their proposals. What they are looking to do, Studio Shed, is lease town-owned land, similar arrangement to Teens Inc., and develop affordable housing. And so they want to just have a preliminary conversation with you, and we're aiming to do that next month. We worked with Gilpin to secure funding to be a multi-jurisdictional housing authority to study the feasibility of that. The reason we're interested in that is the mountain needs for housing don't always mirror the housing needs of our down below neighbors. And so Boulder County's ability to support us as their housing authority is often pretty limited. So we're interested in looking into our own multi-jurisdictional housing authority, which would be Gilpin, Nederland, and Lyons, and then some unincorporated in between. We're getting a lot of Downtown Development Authority supports right now. I'm going to a conference next week. So working on a challenge community and really just looking at how do we develop downtown in the best way possible for Nederland, and also working on a creative industries district with DCI and the Peak to Peak Scenic Byway. And that's just to encourage you to come across the Scenic Byway through an economic opportunity using arts and culture. Other things in this packet that I'll just shout out from our team. Let me just get to them. Obviously, it's election time. Makes you super busy. If you haven't voted, you should. Election day is Tuesday, so ballots are due by 7 o'clock, and then we'll be able to release that by that evening. Otherwise, I think I just about covered everything in the packet. Happy to answer any questions that may have come up while reviewing it.
So you can drop off your ballots at Town Hall or in the box down here.
Town Hall Monday through Friday from 9 to 6, or this box is open 24/7.
They just don't put it through a mail slot.
Yeah, please don't. You can also mail it to us, but it's preferred if you drop it off, especially if you're starting to get close to election day, because if we don't have it by 7, we'll check the mail right at 7, but if we don't have it, then unfortunately your vote is not counted.
I'll come pick it up.
Okay.
Oh, and the last thing logo fun. We did finally land on the logo. The Board of Trustees did select a logo. So we're moving forward with our creative identity campaign, getting that approved by the Colorado Tourism Office, and we'll start to utilize the logo that's in your packet for town documents.
Okay.
And then, the only other thing is, I guess, is what's coming before the Board of Trustees. Normally on the first meeting of the board, we usually just like do the changing of hands and that's it, but we need every meeting we can get. So we're actually going to move these 2 action items from tonight to the Board of Trustees on the 16th. So they'll talk about it that night. And so if they're new to the board, they're going to have to be quick to get on their homework and review these packets. And then we're also just going to talk about rules of procedure and electronic participation. There are some board members who are interested in just revisiting kind of the conduct or the specifics to how a board operates. Things like, do they want to start earlier? Is it possible that are there requirements that you have to come in person unless you're out of town? Some of those things are of interest to board members to discuss. So we're going to open up an initial conversation about that with the new board.
We're going to start, doesn't have the new logo yet. Are we going to start using that soon?
Yeah, once it gets finally approved by CTO. So probably not until May.
Okay.
We just need the full packet to get approved. But yes, all of your documents will have the logo, and they'll actually all aims will have the same theme. You're going to see continuity in all documents that come out of town.
Good.
So getting back to the training of new members, is this something that maybe Elizabeth might be interested to join as well? It might.
Absolutely. So it'll be on Thursday, April 11th at 7 o'clock here. And yeah, please, anyone's welcome to come. We obviously focus on kind of the expectations of boards, but then there's a very large legal component to talk about quasi-judicial versus legislative and executive and motions and how meetings should be conducted. Robert's Rules of Order we'll talk about. So Elizabeth, it may be really helpful because there is a large piece that Attorney Madsen does for us.
Thanks for the suggestion. It sounds great. I have already on my calendar the BZA meeting at 7.
Yep, so there will be no BZA meeting. There's nothing before them. And for some reason I don't know where that WebEx invite lives. So I can't cancel it. We should probably send an email. It's like not in either WebEx.
Okay. So let's see, what else is on the docket for I'm sorry,
I have some questions.
on the Board of Trustees meeting, or that's what we were talking about?
Well, we were talking about the staff report.
Sorry, I kind of moved into both. I combined the 2 informational
Yeah, I
items
thought
together.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I have a few questions. I'm curious, will there be any online outreach on Facebook at all to remind people about the vote? I haven't really seen a whole lot of activity.
I'll take that on.
Yeah, I mean, they did it. So we've done it on our channels, and I know Peter posted something just yesterday or Monday that he pushed out to the 3 Facebook groups.
Okay.
That
would be awesome, I think.
Facebook moves so fast, but I will recommend to Peter that we do it a few more. I know he is, but the question is it making it to all the pages? I'm not sure.
Yeah. For the number of people who vote in town, it would be disappointing if somebody just forgot. And then I wondered, so how are things going with the Boulder County Sheriff's Office and staffing up and the relationship with Sergeant Merriam? Can you give us just
it's the relationship with Sergeant Merriam is great. He definitely really understands our needs but staffing has been challenging. Like we still don't have our daytime officers. And to actually meet with him and 2 of the commanders tomorrow about that, because there were 3 that went through academy, but like 1 dropped out, and then there's an issue with the other one. So now there's only 1. And so it's like, what is the game plan? So I don't know. I don't have an answer for that, but I will tomorrow. I think that's the biggest challenge. The other things I've heard is just some concerns with dispatch and the way, everything needs to drive through dispatch, where maybe in the past you could have called law enforcement directly, but some concerns about how dispatch is handling calls. And there are some circumstances where they're like, we're not sending anyone. And so I'd like to unpack that a little more tomorrow. And then the last thing is the fire department does have concerns about the 50-50 coverage at night. They are finding that some of their more challenging calls, so at 6 o'clock, we moved to 50-50 coverage, in which the officers only have to spend 50% of their time in Nederland, and then they become nighttime deputies. So they could be in Allen's Park at the time of a call and have really no means to get to us. And so the fire department has concerns that they're ending up in domestic violence situations and no officers with them. So they are actually going to draft a letter for the Board of Trustees to consider, at the very least, keeping the 100% Nederland coverage to 2 o'clock in the morning. Whether Boulder County can do that, I don't know, because we don't even have the daytime officers. So those are just some of the feedback I've received so far.
Suggestion, Jim, take a look at the they're posting reports that end up in the Board of Trustees packet, and they're pretty detailed.
And I was going to just follow up and say, please thank Sergeant Merriam for those reports, because I have to tell you, as I was looking through those the last couple of months, I didn't realize how much activity we actually have going on in town. It's good to be seeing those and some of the levels, there's some more serious stuff going on than I would have guessed, I think, as a resident. And I had one last question, and then I'll let's go. We removed the old town shop right away vacation because it was tied to the Teens Inc.'s Child Care Center vote, and there's now, can you give us just a little update on now that there's a referendum?
Yes.
That's going to go forward,
So-
the timeline for that?
Yep, the referendum petition, there was a referendum petition circulated requesting that the Board of Trustees reconsider and reverse that vote, approving the SRU for the Old Town Shop for childcare. That was submitted last Friday. Macy has 30 days to verify signatures. The petitioners needed 67 signatures. They did obtain more than that. I don't have the exact amount. So depending on if Macy kind of disqualifies enough signatures that it puts them under 67, then the petition is no longer valid. But if they have more than 67, the petition stays. Then there's a protest period where people can file a protest against the petition. If that happens and there's protest hearing and there's also a consideration of whether that protest stands or if it's thrown out. I'm not using any legal terms here. But if the petition stands, the referendum petition stands, it will go back to the Board of Trustees, and the Board of Trustees can either reconsider their vote and deny the SRU, or send it to a special election and let the electors decide if the Old Town Shop would be used for childcare or not. If the board chose to go the election route, it takes us about 90 days to really put together an election and mail that out. And so maybe looking at the fall for a special election if it were to go all the way to that point.
So is there a judge? Does this go before a judge to determine if the complaints against the referendum are valid or not?
If
Or
there's a
thrown out?
protest, yeah, there is a protest
a
officer.
protest.
Technically, the clerk serves as that, but in the past, we've always appointed a third party to serve as the protest hearing officer. That's best practice. And we've used Karen Goldman in the past, who is a former clerk and really well versed in protest hearings. And yeah, that would only take place if protests were filed.
Okay.
Who files the protest?
Anyone can file a protest who is a registered elector, right? Anyone. I know, I just said that loud. I'm like, I don't know. Anyone can file a protest for any reason. Ish. Any reason ish. I mean, choice. And so I think that's how they choose to file the protest, really has to take into consideration, what are you filing, and does that potentially speak to like the validity of this petition?
And all of this is all spelled out in state statute. So it's very detailed in state statute. Miranda gave a great overview of it related to protest. It is specified in state statute what you can protest, but it is broad. It's related to the form of the petition. It's the circulation of the petition. Those types of things, did
Any impropriety that may
Yeah.
have occurred? Yeah.
right.
Interesting. Okay.
And
So-
so if that protest gets filed by anybody, and a voter, I presume, okay,
We don't know.
then, but the grounds are pretty loose from what I hear in terms of what you can allege, but it would end up in that very seat. Judge Goldman came up and spent a morning here going through this on the 100 East First Street.
Yeah.
And it was formal. It was an incredibly detailed report on the way out. And she did it in a matter of days.
And maybe I can say kind of loose-ish. So what I would say is like, it's ultimately the protest hearing officer who would assess, which do these protests hold kind of the validity needed to really be considered against the petition. And so people can choose to file for whatever they want, but again, there's kind of specific criteria that the hearing officer has to evaluate on determining whether the petition stands or if it gets kind
And
of
that's,
thrown out.
and that's final. It's not like someone can go back and appeal again and this thing just
Then,
keep.
if the protest hearing upholds the petition, then that protester can file a complaint with the district court, which is what
Oh.
we had last time as well. We had Mr. Mitchell filed a complaint with the district court for review of the hearing officer's decision.
Okay. Wow.
And so maybe I could just add, the reason that this was pulled is obviously, your right of way vacation is not a part of the SRU, but yet it's tied to the same property. And so we're really being mindful that there's two separate applications, and yet the applicant for tonight's was the Teens Inc. Now, the Board of Trustees could decide they want to carry forward on a right of way vacation regardless, because that, for whatever that parcel may become. And that's a question we'll be asking them in the near future is like, do you want to keep going with this and you become the applicant? Or do you want to just hold until we know the resolution of the Teens Inc. SRU?
Okay. All
Confused?
right. Wow.
Right?
More complicated than I thought.
And that was the non-legal version.
Usually is, right? Could you give us a kind of idea of what's coming up for us next month at this point that you know of?
So the only thing is the proposal from Studio Shed wanting to talk to you informally about the development. So the parcels they're looking at is Tilden. So the Tilden Park site, which is off of Tilden, and my computer's about to die, so I won't be able to look up the other cross.
And the highway.
I don't have it.
The highway.
Yeah.
And then Big Springs at the end of Lakeview Drive, Rodeo Court, where the BCHA units are, those duplexes. There's a bit of stretch of land that's not a straight down hill that they could develop. So they want to bring some proposals to you. These are both public lands. So that's where they'd be looking at a lease agreement with the town. However, these developers are committed to developing all of our Proposition 123 13 unit commitment on both parcels, with the goal of trying to get it on one and then just extending affordable housing to the next, or trying to get it between the two. Still working on kind of some land use components there of how to maximize the lot while also making sure we're adhering to setbacks and all of those things. But yeah, pretty cool that they are firmly committed to wanting to be the developer who helps us reach our Prop 123. And that's it. That's all you have. You have a comprehensive plan update
Well, I was going to say we have an update,
in
right?
April. Otherwise, still working with Wolf Tongue Mill to kind of sort some of their stuff out. And so unfortunately, they just keep getting pushed out, but want to bring that minor subdivision to you hopefully in May or June. And that's, I think, all we have in the pipeline at the moment.
Any update on Bobcat Ridge?
Bobcat Ridge has not submitted anything at this time, and I don't know intention to do so. I think they're, of course, waiting post-election, which is also kind of where Ron is sitting as well.
Okay. Yeah, that was my next question. Okay.
I knew where you're going. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any other questions for on staff?
One issue, for those of you that want to take a look, or you haven't seen it yet, take a look at what's going on over at the new food pantry site at First Street, right near Wolf Tongue. That's what the builder that Miranda was talking about. Once the foundation was in, the building, we had 2 buildings up inside a week because they're cut down in Louisville, packed and brought up the hill.
Wow.
And what I'm going to be watching real carefully is how they wear, how they do in our wind, and so on. But these things went up super fast once permitting was taken care of. And we were shoveling on Monday, and by Friday night we had roofs on both of them.
Wow.
The third building's going in now.
But it has to go through a certificate of occupancy that
Goes through the full process.
The whole permitting process.
Correct. Yeah, they're still in the building, so they haven't even called for inspections yet.
Okay.
One thing I didn't put in the packet, I almost think I should have, and I can email it to you, is I actually did a grants presentation at the last board meeting discussing the 25 grants that we have, are partners with, or pursuing. And I think that that was really interesting, to do it, because I like to live blindly through all that we do, but taking the time to really map them all out. And we'll be happy to send it to you all, but I think it just shows how much town staff are doing on top of their regular jobs. Grants are a whole other animal to take on, but we have been lucky enough to be awarded quite a few grants and then be able to be partners and a lot more.
I think that'd be of interest for everyone to know
Yeah.
what's going on there. Yeah.
And I'm impressed with how much you're doing. I saw that in the Mountaineer. I mean, that's a lot. Is there any consideration to try and bring on somebody to kind of manage those grants and be kind of a grant writer, a part-time person, or?
Yeah, the board had talked about that for the 2024 budget, and my ask was like, can we please liaise? We just want to like get some of these off our plate. Like the thought of taking on more is a lot. I think the challenge I've always had with a grants writer is it's one thing to write it, it's another thing to manage it. And managing grants takes institutional knowledge. And if you don't have the institutional knowledge, I still have to go to that meeting. I still have to sit at that and it may not be me, but it may be someone else who has the background. And so that's the only challenge that a grants manager could present is if you don't know the project, you don't know anything about the history or whatever that is, they don't necessarily help us. So I think that's something we really have to weigh out. And yes, I think it would be incredible to have someone take over these grants and make sure that we're always, in compliance. I think we do well on our own, but that would be the only challenge when I just think about how many grants we run and how often it's hard, just Britt being new, it's like hard for her to maybe manage certain grants without having that institutional knowledge coming in. So then we have meetings and there's 5 of us in the room. That's 5 staff members' time.
But don't you think over time, just as Britt has, got up to speed, that if you had that person on, as they become more familiar, maybe 6 months, a year down the line, then all that work is off of your plate.
No, I agree. And that's where, if that's the route the board wants to go, I'm not by any means opposed to it or offended by it. I think that's just the one observation is just how much you need people who just have been around. And I haven't been around that long, but how much value that holds with some grants. But yeah, I'll be interested to hear with the board, because that night the board asked me well, how do you get grants? And do we want more? And I'm like, no. To be honest, I was living blissfully unaware until I built this PowerPoint. And then I was like, no, we really don't want them now. I think our team, again, they're stretched, there's a capacity issue, and yet they still show up above and beyond time and time again to make these things happen. And I really value that, but don't want to take it for granted by any means and push people to a breaking point.
No pun intended.
No pun intended.
Because there has to be a critical mass if you get so many and then you just can't manage them or.
I will tell you, I had no idea we had 25 until I put them all down.
I had no idea either.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, I agree. Of course, yeah. I was really proud of our team when I finally pulled it together, and and just our partnerships. I think the section about our partners, the partnership grants that we have are truly incredible as well.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Anything for other business? I think we kind of roll that in together, but if not, I think we're done.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank
Meeting
you very much,
adjourned.
everyone. Have a good
8:52.
evening. Good early evening too.
Nice. They're not all like this, Elizabeth.
No,